Hi, everybody. It's nice to meet you all. So, my name's Harry Saeed. I'm going to be talking about something I would hope is a little interesting. I think the title suggests some sort of interesting, thoughtful relevance to current society and how we're working with technology. So, I work for AWS. I handle Center of Excellence and consulting for the advertising technology and the marketing technology landscape globally. And I come from a background from almost 20 years working in data management, AI, behavioral science, understanding the behavior of consumers and how that essentially syndicates into the utilization and application of technology. A lot of big words. It does something. It's apparently relevant. Monday.com asked me to show up and talk about how AI is essentially shifting the era of leadership. And so I had a long, hard think about this, and there were ways of describing this such that we could talk about how people use Anthropic Claude, or how they use ChatGPT, or even how they use variations of technologies that use AI and to advance leadership. But I didn't want to go down that road because I thought everybody else is doing that, so I thought I'd go down a bit more of a creative road. Hence the title, Leading in the New Era, Quality, Cognification, and the Future of the Mind. On that note, we will jump in. Well, first what we'll do is we'll jump quickly into the subtle definition of the word quality. Something that is a very interesting word. It's quite simple. Everybody's heard of the word quality, obviously. We all uniquely look at the word quality. We all think about it slightly different. I read a book not that long ago, Robert Pirsig, 1974, The Zen and Art of Motorcycle Maintenance, where he talks about the dichotomy of science, creativity, and thought. And it sent me down quite the rabbit hole. Not literally, because I have a cane, so I can't go down a rabbit hole. But essentially, the point here is, on the surface, it's very straightforward. The standard of something is measured against other things of a similar kind, but uniquely measured differently by absolutely everybody. Quality. And I want you guys to just hold that thought for a moment as we just navigate this presentation. Leadership. Leadership's an interesting word as well, similar to quality. Paired well, but at the same time, I think we've all experienced a variance of leadership in our existence and our lives, corporate or otherwise. I've used mathematics to essentially distill leadership here, where L denotes leadership. Q, the first Q here, is quality. And the second Q represents cultivation. And the last R, cultivation C, and the last R is resonance. The alpha, beta, and gamma represent weights, where everybody has the ability to uniquely assign weights to the word leadership. And so this is a distillation. The message here is that as we close down on weights for leadership, it changes the quality of an outcome. Over time, leadership has existed, and over the last 150 years, efficiency has existed. And we've done a fantastic job over the last 150 years. And at the turn of the Industrial Revolution all the way to today, leadership has quite uniquely evolved. That said, the structure of today's organizations were built for a specific type of attention. And I want you guys to also think about that for a second, because that'll come into play. Neurodiverse humans think in very specific ways. Behavioral science implies that we always have a motivation to achieve something. But if we use an efficient way of achieving something, that level of efficiency changes the way we think about something. It is just the way our minds work. It is also somewhat designed by neural networks to change the way they operate based on the amount of information they receive. The larger the volume of information that is applied to a system, the ability it has to change its way of thinking. So what happens when efficiency runs against wars? making it frictionless but forgettable, where output increases but resonance decreases. What happens then? Right now, what we're doing is we're experiencing a state where attention is becoming more and more scarce. And I think everybody knows that ADHD is a thing. I think everybody knows that we spend a lot of time on our screens. I think everybody knows that when we sit at home and watch television, we look at our phone, or when we wake up in the morning, we check our emails. I think we all know this. We don't have to go down that road. But we're all aware of attention span on the decline. But what does that mean for quality? Of course, there's a common sense applied to the lack of attention and the correlation to the air quotes lack of quality. But that's okay, because we have machines to help guide us where we don't have to apply a certain amount of attention, but still derive a certain amount of quality. Students are reading less books, as you can see by this analysis over here. But a good friend of mine came to me not that long ago, and he said to me, "Harry, I've been approached by an investor." Fascinating man. He's come to me and he said that the FAA has a textbook. It measures 11.5 inches wide, high, and 8.5 inches wide, 700 pages. There are 3 of them. Students must study these books and then take a practical test in order to fix a plane or maintain a plane. Students are not signing up to go to school because they don't want to read the textbook. It's a bit of a challenge. So how are they shifting the way to drive attention? Distraction, elusivity, fragility starts to exist. Efficiency starts to plateau. You can't necessarily build to take advantage of this situation where people's attention spans are shrinking or collapsing. We've seen transformation exist absolutely everywhere. Invention to transformation actually is quite a beautiful thing. Attention spans not affected. Again, going back to the turn of the Industrial Revolution, the washing machine was a brilliant transformation from an invention that already existed. Electricity showed up, a drum existed, water was introduced, we have the washing machine. Similarly to refrigeration, brands and logos were created because of refrigeration, Coca-Cola, for example, obviously. But this created global supply chains. That was transformation. That was a type of creative thinking. The washing machine saved, on average, I think it was 17 hours of domestic labor per week. I mean, that was transformational at the time. Absolutely fantastic. But the question that you surely have to ask yourself is that transformation able to exist today? We create more GPUs, we shrink the size of circuits, we speed up the process of creating information, designing information, and creating outputs. But is it transformation, and is it creative, and is it solving the scarcity of our attention span? And that comes back to innovation and transformation beyond creativity. Creativity isn't just a piece of art that you hang on a wall. Not at all. On the contrary. Creativity is also a way of how you manage your mind. Creative thinking and creative mind management is a function that I believe that we should all execute far more in our day-to-day lives. Example here. The Eurostar had approached an agency, said, we want to change tracks. We want to introduce more tracks to help trains move faster from London to Paris. And behavioral scientist economics specialist Rory Sutherland approached the Eurostar company and said, well, why don't we just put free Wi-Fi and some wine on the train instead of spending £6 billion in adding more infrastructure? Turns out people said, oh, we're okay with the train being longer, it's fine. We're happy with free Wi-Fi and wine. It's totally okay. But this changes the ability to think, and that approach changes the ability to create net new outcomes, and that is transformation. Passengers want journeys to be longer, actually. It's brilliant. It's simple, but it is brilliant. It's a type of creative thinking that I do believe does not necessarily exist within machines, but does exist in our ability to connect with others. Quality and resonation. And resonance is something that I do also see a lot more in organizations that are trying to take advantage of machines in other unique ways. Because if every organization is trying to take advantage of machines, then is quality coming to the surface, and is your product or service resonating? Cognitive reframing. Over the last 10, 15 years of my work, I have this one formula that exists in my mind. I couldn't find a slide, so I had to draw it with a Sharpie and take a photo of it. Mind my handwriting, but X is the existing challenge, and that existing challenge can exist in all matters of life. Everything you do in your job, even if it is as simple as doing something in a spreadsheet or something as complex as designing a completely new hybrid car that runs on different types of gasoline or fuels, right? But there is a challenge, there's a cognification, and there is an outcome. The outcome leads to something that could be an epiphany. That is creative mind management. That is the epiphany outcome, which should exist a lot more within leadership and organizations. That probably doesn't. Cognification in this case could be AI, it could be further advanced context, it could even be creative behavior. Enable epiphanies is what I advise and consult on a lot these days, is how do we enable epiphanies in the infrastructure of today, in the advanced technology that we create every single day. Is, do you see epiphanies coming out of your utilization of machine? But if you have epiphanies through the art of cognification, can you then connect those two machines and then have the most ideal outcome? Could you walk up here and sit next to me and say to me, right, I've just had an epiphany. It's magical. It's going to change the way we work. It's going to change the way we operate. It's going to change the way we design, build, and even structure our thought. Cognification. It's a great word. I looked in the dictionary, it doesn't exist. It should exist. Right. The future is leading and enabling epiphanies, in my opinion. Anyway, I like it. Right. You know what's not an epiphany? I'll tell you what's not an epiphany. Things can go wrong too. Right? I don't know if anybody has heard of this brand, but I was looking at where some brands kind of go awry, and there's a brand called Juicero. So faster isn't always better. Efficiencies can exist, but just because there's an efficiency, it doesn't mean it's great, right? It doesn't mean it's good. This brand, or this company rather, came up with this idea, well, let's make juicing more efficient, because who wants to clean a juicer? I don't want to clean a juicer. My sink's a mess. I'm not going to go buy vegetables from the farmer's market. Ridiculous. Out of this world. I will buy this machine, I will buy these pouches, and I'll put them in the machine, and I'll hit a button on my phone, and it will pour juice into a glass. Great. $400, off you go. Brilliant. Turns out, you can take the pouch and squeeze it into a glass. You don't need the bloody machine. Whose idea was that? They raised a fair amount of money, but efficiency isn't always good. Quality comes into the equation. How do you create efficiency, and how do you create quality? Are they synonymous? But I ask you another question. How do you create resonance? And what does resonance mean to you, your work ethic, and your organization? At AWS, we actually are hyper-focused on responsible AI and driving resonance. And one of the areas we're focusing on is not just advancing large amounts of highly functioning code, but also extremely highly efficient and high-quality code as well. And that's part of a practice that we take very seriously. But I do feel bad for Juicero. Good attempts. Leading in the new era, as we slowly come to a close in this presentation, references two metrics that I have been writing about over the last couple of years: the time to optimal output and the time to inspiration. The time to optimal output is rather self-explanatory, I think. It's how long does it take you to decipher the problem and then build the most optimal output. Regardless of the definition, whatever the definition is, there is an optimal output. And the time to inspiration is a little bit more ethereal, just like hygiene of the creative mind. What is it? What is inspiration, and how long should it take you to become inspired to then create the most ideal output? On this quadrant, again, it's relatively self-explanatory. Quality on the left and efficiency on the right, and you want to be in the top right quadrant. So what does it take to understand your time to optimal output and your time to inspiration to start navigating away from certain quadrants into the most appropriate quadrant for your work, your organization, or as a leader as well? I don't believe anymore it is the case that leading is about commanding from the front, but rather shaping conditions to create more creativity and driving epiphany. From output to inspiration to resonance. Resonance is also something I think that I feel like I talk about a lot to customers and partners. Is they ask me, Harry, what is the state of play, and how do we really become unique as an organization or as a business or as a function? And I think about resonance, and I ask them, do you measure resonance? Can your customers come to you and talk to you about resonance? And not often that they have an answer, and they say, well, actually, we should start thinking more about resonance. And I have these 4 pillars I go over, and I say, well, okay, individual paths, right? They should compound positively. So hierarchies lead to systems thinking as opposed to a hierarchy structure, obviously, right? Leadership is probably more gardening now than it is directing to create that resonant stage. Command leads to cultivation. Leaders must become guardians of resonance, I believe. Efficiency probably should more so lead to quality. And machines optimize outputs. Leaders cultivate inspiration. And inspiration goes from rarity to a practice. So I think as we close out, quality really is the higher order here, associated to resonance and associated to inspiration, which is associated to driving and enabling epiphanies. That formula that we create changes something that in math we call ergodicity. Ergodicity is an interesting word. It's a mathematical theory that essentially talks about averages. Individual people should not be the singular average of a larger consortium of human existence. And machines are not designed to make individuals feel average, but rather machines are designed to essentially enable further. Leadership in the new era is starting to think about, it should be starting to think about, how do we enable epiphanies? How do we enable a culture of creativity? And how do we talk to people in a way that drives inspiration, enables inspiration, and the time to optimal output? Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. My name's Harry Said.